Today we're gonna build the pond trifecta. At least that's what I'm thinking of calling it. Like, there's probably a better name for this whole setup, but 3 ponds, we're gonna set all of them up. We're gonna get fish into all 3 of them. I think to make this build a little bit more special, we're gonna do something that I haven't ever done before, but I've seen a lot on the internet over the years, and it's a new thing for me, kind of an anti-gravity-esque thing. You probably just saw it in the preview clip that I put on. But at this point, I have no idea if it's gonna work or how we're going to get that to be incorporated with this whole setup, because obviously the sizes of the different ponds are gonna make it different, and we have some issues to work out here before we get going. The main pond, the only established one that we have to start with, is one that's been here. We set it up last year. It has an extra little pot that's just flipped upside down. It's construction adhesived together or something like that. This was the home of the midnight black medacas all winter long. These fish that we have in here are the best of the best. We used nature to kind of naturally select the slightly weaker ones out. So these are my breeders for the year, and so far they are putting out a ton of eggs. But unfortunately, if you couldn't tell, that pond is not very clear. So kind of weird that this one in the corner that doesn't really get that much light is the only pond that has kind of green watered out. Great for raising baby fish, but not so great if you're trying to enjoy your pond when you have people over, they're checking out your stuff, and they see a gross multicolored weird water pond. So we're gonna have to do some water changes, and we're probably gonna have to do a bunch of other things, but that's the first step when we start prepping for the 3 pond trifecta. Or I mean, whatever we're calling this. I'm trying too hard to give it a cool name. Haven't changed this water since like 1997, dude. That's not 100% true. We did do some water changes right when the season changed over, but still, it's so weird why this one decided to get like green water. I guess it's probably just because we don't have that many plants in it. Like there should be something down at the substrate. This mondo grass isn't really doing anything except for stealing the eggs that I want to be on the mop. And again, really want to emphasize the fact that we're only changing the water for vanity purposes. That water is phenomenal for everything but viewing the fish. And so that's why we're doing it. It doesn't have any nitrogen in it. The green water helps to pull everything down that you wouldn't want to be in the water. So just because it looks terrible doesn't mean that it's terrible for the fish. It's exactly the opposite. At this point, I'm just watching the fish to make sure that none of them are close to the siphon. I also have my hand kind of over the bottom of it, not covering it, but I'm using the top of my fingers, which is at the bottom of the substrate, to kind of loosely drag it along the top of the sand to pull up any of the stuff that's down at the bottom that we don't want. So that's kind of working. I can't even tell how much stuff is down here because I can't see through the water, but I feel like some stuff is coming up. We can see it in the tube. Again, not really like the most necessary thing to do. It's not required of us at this point. None of this is, but just something that we want to do to try and help clean up the water and get it a little bit more clear, and hopefully eventually really clear. Especially if we're gonna have a thing up out of the water that holds it, like that needs to be, we don't want it to be green or yellow. I can feel some algae and some stuff, so if I pull my hand up, like, we're just trying to get this kind of stuff out because it doesn't need to be in here. I think I'm going to stop it at around 15–20% of the water still in here. I'm not really worried about shocking the fish with this water change because the water's still pretty cold and it should be close to what's coming out of the tap. Just mostly a peace of mind thing. We don't want to shock them too much. So there's already a plant that I put in recently from one of the holding tanks inside, but I'm pretty sure that's the only thing that's down on the substrate. We're going to change that with hopefully some of this dwarf sage and hair grass that isn't totally melted. At least I don't think so. The roots look pretty good, so we'll cross our fingers on that. Well, first big water change done, and just as I expected, there isn't a huge difference in the water clarity. So this can be a tough issue to get over. So we're gonna have to be very aggressive with the water changes, big water changes over the next several days. And hopefully by the end of that, we can get something that looks not like this and what it looked like before. I don't want to use any chemical treatments, again, because I'm not that desperate to get it perfect. and I'm just down to put in the time and the little extra work to make it happen. But that is technically an option. I think we don't need to do that though. We of course tossed in some of our Fritz Pond Guard to get rid of chlorine. Our fish don't like to be swimming around in chlorine or, gosh forbid, chloramines. We don't have that problem over here, but that Fritz Pond Guard can help with that too, and it's just more concentrated than the regular stuff. We don't need to have something like Prime that does things with nitrogen, because nitrogen is pretty much a non-issue in these types of setups. So we save a little money by doing that. Once again, thanks Fritz for being a sponsor of the channel. They help me out a ton, especially around this time of year with the patio pond stuff. So I think we're gonna just take a pause on work on this guy. I'll do some stuff behind the scenes, of course, but we should just move on to these two fresh ponds. So I've already done a little bit of work. They obviously match the original pond, the big one. So there's a few different sizes of these A&R pots, these plastic things. I like these a lot for patio ponds. We already have some Monterey beach sand and a little bit of water in both of them. So of course I've already done some of the prep work that we did to these things. They have little holes that we've patched up where the tag sits. That's the only annoying thing about them, and they're pretty much all ready to go. I have the fish all picked out for these other two ponds. We're gonna keep the black Madakas up here. We're gonna do different types of rice fish in these other two, but with all of those fish, I think they're just gonna look best with this Monterey beach sand, the lighter stuff. So, and it matches the pots. The big thing is going to be figuring out the plant situation. So for that, you might have already seen we have some of these really cool Pothocarry clips. That's what's holding in the Mondo grass up here. I think this is the potato version, which obviously this isn't a potato, but works for stuff with big clumps of roots, and that has worked out perfectly. This one has some water celery sprigs that are just sitting in there. Hopefully that's going to grow. If you have the right type of plants, smaller stuff, cuttings, these things work great, because the big issue with these smaller pots particularly is that there isn't a lot of room for a full-sized pond plant to sit here. For these two ponds down here, we can at least start by getting in some of these plants. Hopefully they're gonna survive, but I think we wanna have something down in the substrate to kind of spruce things up and give another dimension to it. These plants are already in the process of melting because, again, I nuked them on accident, but the root systems look good, and that's really all we care about with these. They're gonna melt anyway. Even if they were big, beautiful, perfect-looking dwarf sage plantlets, they're still gonna completely die off and have to regrow. So not too worried about it. It's just gonna be a little extra time before this looks good, which is okay. We can be patient. I'm trying to see if all of these look like they have enough life in them. Some of the roots got a little cooked. I think we'll go for it though. It's something that, I mean, we don't want to waste plants if they're actually gonna grow. I'm hoping they just do. They're gonna be nice and chill over here in the shade anyway. If it doesn't work, we'll just pull it out. And yes, it is something that is gonna add to the nitrogen pool, the nutrient pool, however you want to think about it in this tank, especially if they continue to die off a lot more. But the plan, as always, is to have other things in the tank that are going to consume that and sort of balance each other out. Never hurts to have something that can feed the bacteria that we want to colonize these things anyway. So it's kind of a, it'll work, but you just got to keep an eye on it and make sure nothing gets too crazy. While we wait for the ponds to fill up, gotta come in here and show you guys this. I showed it off at the very end of the last video, but there are a ton of fry in here. Sorry for the reflections. Let me get over here. Try and zoom in on the back so you can actually see them. Super tiny and super hard to see, but golden white cloud minnow tank. We took those parents out and we put them into the pond that was right over there by the raptor tail. They probably just get scattered a bunch of eggs back here in the roots of the peace lily, and we just got lucky. We pulled the parents and there happened to be a bunch of fish. I noticed them almost immediately. I probably netted a bunch of them up with the parents, but yeah, so we got super lucky. They're super hard to see, but there's tons of them in here. I mean, 50, 60, 70, maybe. They're not all gonna make it because they just won't. The females shoot out hundreds and hundreds of eggs, and you get smaller and smaller amounts as nature takes place. But super stoked for that. Again, you have to pull the parents out because they will eat eggs that they can find, and they will eat tiny baby fish that they can find too. And they're pretty good at finding them. So I don't know if you can see just how many. There's probably way more in here than I even think, because they're so hard to see, so tiny. Just letting them eat on the bacterial film that's in this tank and some of the other junk that's in here, the microbes, putting a little bit of fry food in. But other than that, we're probably just gonna leave this here and let them grow up in this thing, because why not? I don't know. We were gonna originally take this thing outside, but I'm kind of liking the vibe of it, just chilling here. All right, next day alert, and the pond, I think, is looking a little bit clearer. We can actually see down to the bottom of it. So another day or two of consistent water changes, just draining it down almost to the bottom and then filling it back up, and I think we're gonna be nice and crystal clear. How long we can keep it that way, though, is kind of another story, but we'll deal with that another day. Right now, though, I kind of want to figure out how we're gonna make our little anti-gravity water up out of the water things. I went and bought a couple things. They were super cheap, but like they're just glass things that you're supposed to put pretzels in, I guess. I figured they'd kind of be perfect for this project, like size-wise. I wanted something that was a cylinder. These two are a little bit shorter, maybe by like an inch, but they just have a cork lid. So we'll pop these out and then we'll go get a pond plant because I'm thinking that's what we need. In a perfect world, physics and gravity wouldn't exist, and this could just sit here with water in it, but we need something to prop this up, and unfortunately there isn't a little holder like this that could seat this thing perfectly. That would be probably ideal. My idea is to use a pond plant to kind of prop it up and put it in a way that's stealthy enough and doesn't look terrible. Jar number one, pond plant number one, and what I'm thinking is that we find a spot that has a little bit of room on the side, like there's plants here, there's a little edge here. Hopefully we can just get this to sit right here. As long as we keep the water level just above this and it's not gonna go down below it, then no air should be sucked into it. But we need to hold this here, else it's just gonna fall. When it has water in it, it's gonna be a little heavier, but my thoughts are just zip tie around this to kind of balance it in place almost. I think we're probably gonna need 3 zip ties on this dude. That should hopefully just hold it in place, like pressure against the plant slightly. I don't think it's going to be enough to where it would be an issue, but let's just go around here. I need a 3rd arm. This is kind of an issue here with it slipping. It's like I need a little nub here to kind of hold it in place. I guess I could do it around the plants, but that might be a little... Or if this thing just had a little lip, that might be easier. I wonder if the other one does. No lip, so we're gonna have to improvise. Maybe even just a little bead of silicone or something for that zip tie to press up against would be perfect. Oh, there's a fish in it. There's a fish in it. I swear one of these dudes just swam up in this thing. So I have it resting here just to proof of concept. I'm working this out in my head, but so the pond plant is a little bit too low. This is sitting just on the base of the pot, and then it's wedged in here because this gets heavy when it's full of water, right? So that, I mean, that could work, but that's not really the effect that I want. I want it to be up higher so we can see some cool stuff. And I swear, one of the black midnight medacas was up in this thing just a second ago. Kind of worried that the fish would not have a reason to swim down under this and go up there. Like I've seen people that they do select feedings and stuff, but you have to feed a food that floats, of course, and then you definitely don't want to have this thing placed in a way to where there's too small of a gap for A, a fish to swim up it, and then B, for the fish to be able to figure out how to get out of it. Like we're not trying to accidentally create a fish trap here. Like it's just supposed to be something that every once in a while you might see them in it, and if you do a select targeted feeding into this thing, then you probably would definitely see them. And actually, the more that I sit here and look at this thing, the more I realize I don't think we need to do anything with the silicone or the zip ties. Furthermore, I think that if we put a dab of silicone on there, I don't think it would be that strong. I don't think it would really help that much in the grand scheme of things. So I think in the interest of time, we're just gonna skip that. Like, this is pretty stable. Yeah, it could get knocked over if somebody bumped into this, but I don't think that's gonna happen. And I don't think it would be the end of the world. Like, this thing would just tip into the pond and maybe hit some plants, but I do have to get some of the goo from the tags and things off of these to get them prepped though, so I'm gonna work on that. Check out the Rainbow Shiners little update from last week. We did the egg trap, the automatic setup. Unfortunately, no eggs to report, so that could be for a couple different reasons. My Rainbow Shiners could still be getting used to this setup. I mean, it's only been like 4 days, I guess, in all reality, so I'm trying to be patient. Another reason could be that the area that we created here is not suitable or it's just not attractive to them. I haven't seen any fish really hang out in this area, which is a little concerning. No eggs to be seen up here yet, but that doesn't mean it's never gonna happen. I think what I want to do is get like a time-lapse camera or something that can watch them right when the lights turn on and right when they start to breathe, because I'm never out here at like 6 a.m. I do have the lights running for like 15 or 16 hours, and then the water temperature in here is a little bit higher than normal. It's a little cooler than what it would be outside, but it's still, I think, in their range. It's upper 70s, so they should be all good to go as long as they're able to breed from a biological standpoint, which I'm pretty positive they have to be. So if this ends up not working, if they don't like this because it's kind of a small area, maybe they need something bigger, maybe this lip is something that's just enough to bug them, then what I'll probably do is set up a different, like not an automatic type of a setup, so just a basket with a false bottom and just something that's bigger, so more rocks, and then we'll just check it from time to time just to make sure they don't preferentially like that type of a setup. We could modify this as well. We could try to figure out how to make this bigger, or at least, very least, we could just cut the rim off of this so it's a little bit lower profile. But I don't think that's the issue, but I really think they just need a little bit more time. I've been feeding a lot, like 3 or 4 times a day, so that shouldn't be an issue. We'll just try and be as patient as possible here. Looks like this thing survived the night, and we actually have fish up in this thing. I didn't feed into the area or anything. I did put some random food just in the middle of the pond earlier, but they're looking like they're actually hanging out in this thing, which is cool. I haven't seen these fish from the side in literally forever, right? So that's, I don't know, I'm liking this. It's a little precarious, yes. We have like a sponge just placed right here, and it kind of holds the side of it, but it is so heavy, like, you can see it's got a decent amount of wobble, but I think it's going to accomplish what we want. And I think we can recreate it in our other ponds. That's the idea, at least. So did another water change last night. This water's getting a little bit more clear every day that we do this. As you can tell, like, it doesn't look that bad. As we look into the column, we're really going to see if the water has some discoloration, which it still does, but doesn't look nearly as bad as I thought it would. The camera is going to be tough here because of just all the reflections. This thing's glass, right? Like, we're not going to get the best view for you, unfortunately, but in person it looks pretty cool, and you can definitely tell that there's fish in here. I'll keep an eye on these fish throughout the day, just make sure that they figure out how to get in and out of this thing. You never know. I mean, like, half of the bottom is open, so they should be able to, but never know. Just want to make sure everybody is all good. But this is a cool way to be able to see the females with the eggs on them before they rub them off onto stuff. Digging, just being able to sit over here on the couch and look over and actually see the fish, kind of cool. We're wasting daylight. Let's get these ponds finished. So we have the 2 over here, and I'm thinking that the fish that we hopefully get today are gonna go in here. So I already got a pond plan in here. We need to get this dressed up and basically simulate what we did over here. Need to put a little extra water in here. Got everything plugged up with our silicone on the tag hole, so everything's ready to go. I'm not sure how our substrate plants are doing. It's been a couple days since we put them in, and I don't know, like, we might have to do some replanting later at some point, but we'll give them some more time. With the water levels pretty much where I want them, roughly, I think we need to raise this plant up a little bit. So we're gonna do that with just a paver stone. These will add some carbonate hardness to the water over time, but did a check on this pond before. My water's really soft, and the water's still really soft today. So it depends on how many of these you use, obviously, relative to the water volume. And it's totally safe to use these. Did it in the pond over there that's 2 years old, and everything is all good. It sort of buffers itself out, and then it doesn't keep accumulating for forever, making it crazy hard or anything. So we're gonna use, I think, at least one more in here to try and get this pot up to roughly where that one is. So we have, what, like an inch before that one sets. We might need a 3rd brick in here. Let's check that out. It might be too high though. None of this is very exact, but if you can see this, it's looking like we have roughly, we could probably raise the water up here a little bit too. So if we did that, I think that sets it perfectly, kind of like how the other one is. So let's try out our cylinder here. You could put this on dry and then pull the air out with a piece of airline tubing, or you could just do like this. Try not to bring it up out of the water or it'll all gush out. But with this plant, we don't have room like we did on that one. So I think what we're gonna have to do is either pull some of these plants out, repot them, or we could just chop them back. And I think that's what I'm gonna do. Some of the leaves over here are dead anyway, and I think it might be kind of cool if we make room for this and some of them start to grow back up into the jar. That might be cool too. But it does definitely hurt to just chop off healthy growth like this. Hopefully in the long run it's kind of a beneficial thing. Hard to say. We are very much winging this whole project. I think that could probably be enough to hold in place, especially if we have pressure from the other side of the pond over here. But maybe I'll cut a little bit more. Trim up some of these dead leaves while we're at it. We want to be able to see the jar from where we're sitting too, which is over there. So I'm going to put it on this side so we can see our fish. Hopefully get all the air out of there. Hopefully this one we can set a little bit more. We can balance it really good so we don't have to worry so much about it falling. But these things are so heavy that if there's any kind of lean to it, it's gonna tip. And with this one, I can already see it's not quite in the corner. We don't have as much of a straight shot with this one because it's a little bit of a smaller bowl. Actually no, it's the same size as this one, so we shouldn't have this. This is a smaller cylinder than that one. Maybe that's part of the issue. Trying to keep everything super level is also hard too. There's some junk in this thing we want to get out. Don't want any little plant bits in our water. Another precarious sponge kind of holding this thing in place. We'll figure out a better way to do this, but for the time being, I'm liking how it's turning out. Like it shouldn't go anywhere. And the fish actually, these guys, they've since been out of this, but they keep coming back up into it. I don't know, they like it. I think, I don't know, they seem to be digging it. This female's got some eggs on her now. Kind of interesting, they did all that since it was daylight, which isn't supposed to happen, but I don't know, maybe they're a little confused. We've been changing the water a lot. That might have something to do with it. I don't know. But yeah, this is looking pretty good so far. I'm happy with it. Just got to make sure these things stay as upright as possible. We need to finish our little pond, which I gotta go find a pond plant for this guy. But in the meantime, I want to do this. So we're going to bust out the Pothocary clips and we're going to hang some plants over the sides of this. I think it's just perfect because we have this height here. And for that, we're going to use a channel favorite plant. Everybody seems to be really into this, which is of course the creeping Jenny. This is an older plant. It survived the winter. This whole thing completely frozen over. This guy's actually flowering, which is pretty cool. This plant is great for being completely submerged in water and then of course growing out of water. And it's probably going to do that no matter how you set it up in your pond anyway. But what I've found with it though is if you're going to propagate this and then hang new pieces into a pond like we're about to do, if you go in and you take leaves that have been only submerged, so like if we came in and we cut these off and hung them over, even if they have roots that are in the water, once we put that out of the pond, the plant is going to get super stressed and these leaves are just going to melt away. So if we want to do what we're about to do, we want to use propagates from leaves and stems that are already up out of the water so that they just have less shock. And rather than take anything from this awesome plant and pond setup because it's just doing so well, I think we're going to try something different. I have a couple creeping jennies that have never seen the water. They're obviously still in the pots that we bought them in. So we're going to strip all the soil off of these and then we're going to set these up in the pond hanging over the edge. And I think that's just going to be like the most successful way to do it, or we're going to have the least amount of wilt. And it's as simple as just draping it into this little connector piece that's on the adjustable, like you can slide this. This thing's super old and gummed up, so I'm not gonna mess with it too hard. And we just wanna put it in this way so the roots are in the water. And then we can kinda mess around with it a little bit to figure out how we can cover the lip so that we don't see it. I think having a third one on this top pond would be a little bit better. Not a lot of room. We could do one on the bottom, but definitely an extra one up here I think would balance that out a little bit more. Not super important, I'm just being picky. This is kind of similar to what we did last year, at least with the creeping Jenny overhanging the edge here. It's kind of cool having 2 extra ponds though. That's gonna be nice. And being able to see the fish from like any spot, right, from far away, I think is gonna be pretty sweet. Some of this stuff might go through a little bit of shock over the next couple of days. That's no big deal, but having this area be mostly in the shade, I think is really gonna help. Don't be afraid to put your pond in almost complete shade because I think it just wins every time. It's gonna help reduce the chances of having that happen. I still think that's really weird that we were sort of green watering out with this location, but it's never impossible, you just gotta keep that in mind. I think that happened mostly because we didn't have plants like this in the pond. So that being the biggest thing, nutrient removal, and also creating little bits of shade. Like if we put some floating plants in here, put some sylvinia in it, that would dramatically cut down on the amount of light that this thing gets, even though it doesn't really get that much light in the first place. That's another case for why you'd wanna put a bunch of like dwarf sage down at the bottom of your pond, because it's just gonna help. Even if you have pond plants, it's not always a done deal if it's gonna do everything you want it to do. More plants equals a better time, I think. And oh, yeah, S word. Can I not say that on YouTube? Sorry for not cussing. We have baby rainbow shiners in this pond. Can you tell I've been borrowing plants from this? That's pretty crazy. I'm surprised they haven't gotten eaten. So those must have been laid, those look big. Those must have been laid a while ago. Yes, there are fish in here. They're just hiding under the sylvinia. Looks like there's also 1 mosquito larvae somehow alive in here. It hasn't gotten eaten yet, but that is so cool. I mean, that has to be what they are. That's the only explanation. So unfortunately, the fish that I didn't really care if they bred or not because they weren't the most pretty fish, they have managed to do it, and the parents will definitely eat the babies if they find them. So I should pull these fish out if I was smart. So I will do that now, because why not? Maybe I can just get lucky and suck them all in with 1 dip of this thing. That probably got most of them. I don't know, there could be more in here. I missed the mosquito larvae. Oop, there's a second one. So keep that in mind. Rainbow shiners don't like the mosquito larvae that much, or at least, I don't know, they could have been hiding in the back corner where the fish couldn't find them or something. Something weird, I don't know. I'm just stoked that we got fish. I was not expecting that at all. I'm glad I pulled that pot out. They must have been hiding back there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not even gonna pretend to count, okay? But obviously there's a lot more that were probably born than that. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of them, they just get eaten immediately, or the eggs get eaten immediately. Let's hit these guys with some more legit. They're obviously hungry. If they're breeding, they need all the food that they can get. Even weirder, how we have mosquito larvae when we have this amount of flow going on. I guess there's not really any flow over here, so if they get laid over there, then they could maybe survive, but that's still crazy that the rainbow shiners weren't eating the mosquito larvae. I think they just love legit fish food so much that that's the only food they'll eat. That's kind of the only explanation, right? But maybe it is just the heat. Like, that's really the only difference. Those fish out there have probably been fed even less. And I don't think, I mean, the light duration isn't any different than what these fish have, right? I mean, obviously it's not outside, so they're not getting the natural sunlight, but another day, and it looks like we still don't have any eggs. So I don't know. Another thing that I've noticed is that their coloration in here isn't as good. So our fired up fish, or the ones that we think are males, they don't look as dark blue as they did under the sun. I'm not really too bummed about that. I mean, the purpose of having them in here is to get them to breed and to have a bunch of babies so that we can have the enjoyment of them looking really good outside when we have an infinite amount of them. But Still, I mean, these are just little things that I'm making note of to document the whole experience for you. Still gonna try that other method by making a different little basket and not having the air-driven thing on. Not giving up on it yet, but this is making me think that we could probably have just left them outside and maybe they just would have done their thing like those other fish. One of those things in fish keeping, you just never know. Sometimes ignoring something and just letting nature do its thing is the way to do it, instead of trying to engineer something that's, it looks like it would work on paper, but again, I'm not gonna say it doesn't work, but let's get back to the project. Ended up bailing on the paver for this one because I wanted the whole thing to sit a little bit lower, including our glass jar of anti-gravity water. I think it just kind of helped the whole thing work as a whole. So this is the lowest one, next one, it's a whole tiered system that I was trying to go for. So with that being said, I mean, the main part of the whole project is done. We still have to add some fish. Our specific fish that we were going to unbox and do aren't going to come today, they're going to come tomorrow. You're going to see that in this video, but we can add the fish that I wanted to add to this pond right now. We only need to do one more thing. You guys knew this was coming. We got to add some bacteria to these two ponds because while it's not a 100% necessary thing that we need to do, it's an overkill thing that I always do to my stuff. We added in pond plants that have been in pretty established environments. They have nitrifying bacteria already on them. We added in a little residual soil from some of the plants that we put in here. All of that helps to build the microbial ecology of these ponds, which is going to include nitrifying bacteria or microorganisms that are going to detoxify and convert ammonia to nitrite, nitrite to nitrate. You know this. You know this. But why am I doing this? One, because Fritz is an amazing sponsor of the channel. They've helped me a ton over the years. And two, it's just an overkill thing that I always do, because when it comes to these ponds, yes, you're probably never gonna see any nitrogen in any form, but you just never know. We put in a bunch of things that could melt off. The roots on this creeping jenny could start to decay. The dwarf sage and the hairgrass that is inevitably probably going to melt off is going to be another pool of nitrogen that could accumulate in these ponds. Now, I don't think that that's going to happen, and I don't think that we're ever going to see any nitrogen in these ponds, and this is one of the reasons that prevents that from happening. So yes, while it's not a 100% necessary thing, the nitrogen cycle is going to come about in these regardless. The Fritzozyme 7, the Turbo Start, the whatever bacteria you use is just going to make sure that that happens faster than normal, and faster is never a bad thing. So anyway, that's the rant on why I still use the bacteria even though it's kind of not 100% necessary. Just my thing, what I recommend too. So with that being said, we can now add some fish. I still can't believe that we found those fish. Like, what is happening? I came in here and I thought I was a crazy person because I saw these mosquito larvae. I had to really look to find that fish right there in the middle of the screen. But there's all kinds of other things that you probably can't see that I can see right now. Like little bugs and critters in that water. I think that just goes to show you the power of the outside environment as far as just diversity of what you get. It's so cool. And yeah, I'll get rid of these things before they hatch, don't worry. We got some fish up here. They are, we'll just call them top secret rice fish. Eslame, we'll just call them that. I'm gonna do the cool guy vlog shot here. Oh. We gotta get this raptor tail out of my way, but I want to show you guys this before we put them in the pond. Look at what happens to these fish when the light hits them, okay? So that's what he looks like without any sunlight. Hopefully you can see those fish there, and hopefully they're in focus. I can't tell, but I mean, just amazing. All the metallic colors come out. I really hope you can see that. So maybe we should put these fish in a different pond, but we need to put them somewhere, and this one's available. So we'll start them out here. And just like that, we got fish in little pond number 1. And I mean, not much more to say there. Here's proof that the midnight black Medacas are not trapped in the column because they're not in it right now. Okay, just wanted to throw that out there. So we're gonna have to wait till tomorrow, I guess, to get our fish. We should get them tomorrow, so we'll pick it back up then. All right, last day alert. We better get our fish soon, because we are running out of time, but wanted to show off the ponds here. They made it another night. The columns are all intact. I didn't have to prop them up, I swear. And it's so funny because these midnight Medacas love this thing. They're always up in it. So right now there's one. Like 3 minutes ago, there was 3 of them in it. They just love it. Like, I don't know what it is. I hope it's not because they keep going up there and they are getting disoriented, and then I don't think that's what it would be, because they leave and they keep coming back. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe I should ask this spider if he knows what's going on. The fish that we added yesterday have not, or at least I haven't seen them go up into their column. They have a lot of room. Hopefully you can see through that reflection. Maybe kind of. It's about half the width of the column, so it should be easy in and out. I think they're still just getting used to being not in a tiny little tub in the fish room, getting acclimated to the temperature swings of being outside, so I don't know, we'll see what happens. But maybe it is just a particular specific fish thing. There's something about these guys that just love going up in here. I would just get to chill on the couch and look over and actually be able to see our fish. So cool. I'm such a nerd. Okay, well, look, we are waiting for these fish. I have about 3 hours. There's a tiny little window here today where we can get them because I gotta head out. But I think we're gonna get lucky. Hopefully, all we have to do is unbox them and put them right in the pond. It should be pretty quick. Look, see, there, another one just swam up in it. Homie and his friend. Where'd he go? He's over there now. They're just, yeah, they like it. Something about it. It's always the male. Like, he's the one that has the little yellow on his tail. He's the only one that has that. And yeah, they just love it for some reason. It's so interesting. This video feels like it's really long, so we're gonna speed through this unboxing. The fish did show up from the Medaca lair. My buddy Jackson, nice little thank you in here. I'm sure there's some stickers in here, but we gotta do this quick, okay? So we got, I don't even know how many yokihi. These are the all orange rice fish. We have some in the fish room, but I just wanted to get more so we could really fill this pond out. We actually have a couple juveniles that we managed to breed inside before like the winter really took over. And so we need to, I like this eco-friendly packing material. This looks like spaghetti. We gotta get these guys temperature acclimated. I'm sure they're probably even colder in this bag. This water's not super warm because it's relatively early in the morning, so should be a pretty quick process. One thing that I do remember about Jackson's setup is that his water is really hard, and these ponds are pretty dang soft. So I'm gonna go grab the salty shrimp stuff and I'm gonna buffer it up a little bit to try and match. We don't have to get exactly the same kind of water mineral composition. The rice fish can take it, but we'll slowly kind of adjust them down to a softer water probably over the next few weeks. That way I just don't have to constantly be remineralizing the water whenever we change it, which again isn't very frequently, but it's just nice to not have to do that if I'm being honest. They're not live bearers. They don't need the water to be super hard. I don't think it's a very important thing for them or their eggs. I seem to be able to breed these fish and do just fine with them with having soft water. So if you were curious about that, now you know. That's a cool little sticker. I love that. I need to get some actual rice fish stickers in my fish sticker collection. How I don't have those already, don't ask me why. But yeah, if you want to get some really awesome rice fish from a dedicated hobbyist that breeds up some amazing fish, or you're just looking for some variants of rice fish that aren't super popular that you're not going to find on like mainstream websites that sell fish, or even at your local fish store because these fish aren't that popular yet, then definitely check out the Medaca Lair Instagram page. Jackson, the way he sells fish is a little kind of old school where it's like a list, and you got to get in touch with him either on social media or email. And at the end of the day, because he is a hobbyist, the availability is going to be very seasonal. So he did a soft launch a few days ago. I don't really know what his stocking looks like right now. So if you're seeing this in June when I'm posting this, you might have to wait a little while before you can get your hands on some fish. So just keep all that in mind, but definitely check out the Medaca Lair if you love rice fish. Look, normally I would never trust another man's water, all right? But we're pressed for time. So we're about to break some big time fish tank rules. And we're just gonna add these fish with the water into the pond, okay? Jackson, I feel like I trust him enough. I feel like whatever he's got in his water, I wanna have in my water too. Again, doesn't make any sense at all, but we're gonna do it. I don't think anything bad can happen. And look, this is a brand new pond. Whatever he's got, I want it in there. And there we go. We got the fish in. Let's take a look at them. You guys know the proper way to add fish. Even if you don't have anything in there, you never want to add the fish store water or whatever, or anybody else's water into your system. But again, I think this is a situation where it's not a big deal. So there are the yokihi. They are freaking out, even though they don't look like they're freaking out. They're just very still. I think we got 5 of them, and then we have a couple more in the fish room that we'll add eventually. We'll just wait a few days, maybe a week, just to make sure every fish in here is good, which I'm not worried about at all. I know that they're gonna be perfectly healthy. But you never know. Sometimes shipping is stressful, even if it is quick. So we'll just be patient, and we'll see if they like the cool little tube thing. I don't know, what are we calling this? I don't even know what to call this. The see-through pillar, the viewing port. I'm not sure, but I think this dude is already thinking about going to check it out, even though he's on the other side of the pond. So there you go, we did it. We made 3 ponds. It only took 3 days and like a 45-minute video, but we did it. 3 different types of Medaka rice fish that we are hopefully gonna breed a bunch of this summer. So we'll have to make a few modifications. Of course, we can go with the mops. Because there are some things that they can rub eggs on, we're gonna have to either pull the females out in the mornings to really collect the eggs, or just be okay with having less on the mop. They're still gonna put some on there, but we definitely do want to get a bunch more of all 3 of these fish. So yeah, I think that is the video. Thank you for watching this whole thing if you managed to do that. I don't blame you for skipping around. It was a little bit of a long one, but yeah, I'm gonna relax a little bit. I'm gonna check out the fish. I'm gonna make sure everybody's happy with their new setups. We have a handful of other pond things that we need to get done in this backyard. I need to do a bunch of cleanup and some other things. I need to figure out where the raptor's gonna live. Need to do some work to them. I'm rambling at this point. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week.